Hello, good evening to you. Welcome to another Monday night with Sound Engraver. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope this has been a really good start to your week. I'm just going to go ahead and check if audio is good, if visual is good. I'm also going to check my YouTube, make sure it looks good as well. It says that oh, there I go. Okay, that's nice. I'm going to bring my volume down there. And the professor, my wonderful professor, has confirmed that I look and sound perfect. Well, very, very good. I'm wearing something a little lighter because it's been warm, but I haven't been feeling like wearing short sleeves. I have more sporty looks for short sleeves, so that doesn't fit with the mood of our reading for today. J.R.R. Tolkien reading of the first part of the Simarillion. So I went with something a little bit more kind of like a sky green, like a sea green, sky blue mixture, which I think is fitting for the story that we are going to immerse ourselves in today. So this is a little bit different. I'll welcome the chat in just a bit, but this is a little different, a different stream today. I had really liked talking about the aesthetics of Tolkien's works, the aesthetics of Middle-earth and what Middle-earth looks like. And I got to thinking, maybe I should read Ainulindalë, the first part of the Simarillion. Now, this might be a little bit of a strange choice for my channel because I like to talk about music and I also like to talk about popular art. But the reason why I bring up Ainulindalë is it's the creation story and it's very musically descriptive. So Tolkien really works with the idea of the great music beginning the first world of the first part, the first age of Middle-earth. Actually, prior to the actual first age of Middle-earth, this is the beginning of the beginning. And so I was thinking about reading the text, and I was also thinking about doing it this way, welcoming the chat and then getting right into the reading, because it is 12 pages, I believe. Actually, it'll be about 9 to 10, maybe 10 and a half pages of text. I will leave out a few excerpts because they actually are difficult sentences to read out loud. I read through the text and made sure I could read through it okay. And the sentences are they aren't joined properly, and these specific sentences are more like commentary in the narrative rather than the narrative, what's happening in the story itself or the moment. So if you guys aren't familiar with the Simarillion, maybe you're familiar with, Jackson's, I'll put it right here outside the text. There. There we go. Maybe you're familiar with Jackson's trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But the one thing, whether you've watched the movies or read the books, Lord of the Rings books, the one thing you note as a viewer and as a reader is the sense of time and the passage of time and the sense of age, like there's been histories in the past. And so this is a collection, a compilation of text, I think compiled by Christopher Tolkien, edited by his son. So J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, came up with the text of his Middle-earth history, but it's brought together and edited by his son, Christopher Tolkien, who had recently passed, I think, a year and a half ago. So I'm very much interested in reading the first part because of the musical depiction of the creation story. The Silmarillion, if you need to consider, if you haven't read the Silmarillion before and would like to try it, one thing to remember is it doesn't read like The Hobbit reads or like The Lord of the Rings. It's pretty dense, but it reads, I would say, the closest thing I can think of is it reads actually like the Bible, the sense of paragraphs and passages, the sense of figures, characters, and time and theme and all of that. So it does not read like Lord of the Rings, but I find it pretty fascinating nonetheless. So I'm going to go through about 9 pages, read all the way through. This could take up to 25 minutes or 30 minutes. I didn't time myself. And this probably will be more like a performance of reading. I have not done a reading on my stream before. I'm not an experienced reader, but it's just worth reading the text and then talking about it a little bit. So this is Ainulindalë, the creation story. Let's go ahead and welcome the chat. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can read Big Al's. I think is this Quenya or Zindaren? I helmar prestar ein hanmanon nenen hanmaton nekhai a hannosten ned wilith. I hope I said that right. Can't do it like Kate Blanchett, but whatever. I mean, well, she rehearsed it. I didn't rehearse it. Go Team Ghost Planet is here. And we've got my wonderful professor. I'm ready to hear this wonderful tale read by one of the Vala herself. Oh, that's pretty flattering. That's pretty flattering. Ace is with us on vacation, so you can watch live. Well, I hope you enjoy listening, and then we'll have some commentary. I will say I might lose my voice a little with the reading because it is quite the text. It reads like Middle English, so it is an older feel. So hopefully I get through it. Okay. Don't put the mic in the water. Don't worry. I'm very careful with my audio equipment. Final Fantasy is with us. Zootopia is also with us. Welcome. And Daniel Heron and greetings, wise people, I hope. And let's see. Team Ghost Planet Go suggests The Shining. It's a sequel to the Dark Tower series. Well, actually, this will not be a book study. This is just a reading. And I don't plan on reading the text going forward. This is just the Ainulindalë. And I'm not really a fan of horror if we're talking about The Shining. But yes, we'll end here. I think that's everyone. So I am ready to listen to the creation of Middle Earth. I hope you guys find this fascinating. I find it fascinating, and I hope I do the reading justice. And if I don't, and you pick up some things you're interested in, you could just get a copy and listen to it. So actually, without further ado, I think we shall begin. So let's go ahead and get started. Ainulindalë, the music of the Ainur. There was Eru, the one, who in Arda is called Iluvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened. For each comprehended only the part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened they came to deeper understanding, and increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Ainur, and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Ainur. And so they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices if he will. But I will sit and hearken and be glad that through you great beauty has been awakened into song." Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps, and lutes, and pipes, and trumpets, and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music, and a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing, and the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Ainur made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright and take being in the moment of their utterance, for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each, and Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melchior to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar. For he had sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melchior among the Ainur had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places seeking the imperishable flame. For the desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, for he was impatient of its emptiness. Melchior is impatient with the void's emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is with Iluvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him. And many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his rather than to the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melchior spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war one upon another in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that he smiled, and he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melchior rose and uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melchior had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern, and he lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others. For it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds in delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. And it seemed at last that there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. The one was deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, from which its melody chiefly came. The other now had achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison as of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice. But it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. In the midst of this strife, whereat the halls of Iluvatar shook, and a tremor ran out into the silences yet unmoved, Iluvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised up both hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar, the music ceased. Then Iluvatar spoke, and he said, "Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melchior. But that he may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Iluvatar, those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what ye have done, and thou, Melchior, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me. Nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." Then the Ainur were afraid, and they did not yet comprehend the words that were said to them, and Melchior was filled with shame, of which came secret anger. But Iluvatar arose in splendor, and he went forth from the fair regions that he had made for the Ainur, and the Ainur followed him. But when they were come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music." And he showed to them a vision, giving to them sight where before was only hearing. And they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. And when the Ainur had gazed for a while and were silent, Iluvatar said again, "Behold your music. This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design that I had set before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself devised and added. And thou, Melchior, wilt discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but a part of the whole and tributary to its glory." And so it was that as this vision of the world was played before them, the Ainur saw that it contained things which they had not thought. And they saw with amazement the coming of the children of Iluvatar and the habitation that was prepared for them. And they perceived that they themselves, in the labor of their music, had been busy with the preparation of this dwelling, and yet knew not that it had any purpose beyond its own beauty. For the children of Iluvatar, elves and men, were conceived by him alone, and they came with the third theme, and were not in the theme which Iluvatar propounded at the beginning, and none of the Ainur had part in their making. Therefore, when they beheld them, the more did they love them, being things other than themselves, strange and free, wherein they saw the mind of Iluvatar reflected anew, and learned yet a little more of his wisdom, which otherwise had been hidden even from the Ainur. Now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers, and amid all the splendors of the world, its vast halls and spaces, and its wielding fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their habitation in the deeps of time, and in the midst of the innumerable stars. But when the Ainur had beheld this habitation in a vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar arise therein, then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thought and their desire towards this place. And of these, Melchior was the chief, even as he was in the beginning the greatest of the Ainur who took part in the music. And he feigned, even to himself at first, that he desired to go thither and order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of the heat and the cold that had come to pass through him. But he desired rather to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be a master over other wills. But the Ainur looked upon this habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which the elves call Arda, the earth, and their hearts rejoiced in the light, and their eyes, beholding many colors, were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring of the sea, they felt a great unquiet. And they observed the winds and the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold and many substances. But of all these, water they most greatly praised. And it is said by the Eldar, the high elves, that in water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Ainur, more than in any substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of Iluvatar hearken still, unsated to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Now to water had that Ainu, whom the elves called Ulmo, turned his thought, and of all most deeply was he instructed by Iluvatar in music. But of the airs and winds Manwe most had pondered, who is the noblest of the Ainur. Of the fabric of earth had Aule thought, to whom Iluvatar had given skill and knowledge scarce less than to Melchior. But the delight and pride of Aule is in the deed of making, and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. And Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, "Seest thou not how here, in this little realm, in the deeps of time, Melchior hath made war upon thy province? He hath bethought him of bitter cold, immoderate, and yet hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains, nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow, and the cunning work of frost. Melchior hath devised heats and fire without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire, nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold rather the height and the glory of the clouds, and the ever-changing mists, and listen to the fall of the rain upon the earth. And in these clouds thou art drawn near to Manwe, thy friend, whom thou lovest." Then Ulmo answered, "Truly water is become now fairer than my own heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the falling of rain. I will seek Manwe, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight." And Manwe and Ulmo have from the beginning been allied, and in all things have served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar. But even as Ulmo spoke, and while the Ainur were yet gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight. And it seemed to them that in that moment they perceived a new thing, darkness, which they had not known before except in thought. But they had become enamored of the beauty of the vision and engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came there to being, and their minds were filled with it. Then there was unrest among the Ainur. But Iluvatar called to them and said, "I know the desire of your minds, that what ye have seen shall verily be, not only in your thought, but even as ye yourselves are, and yet other. Therefore I say, Hayah, let these things be, and I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be, and those of you that will may go down into it." And suddenly the Ainur saw afar off a light, as it were a cloud with a living heart of flame, and they knew that this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Aya, the world that is. Thus it came to pass that of the Ainur, some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should thenceforward be contained and bounded in the world, to be within it forever, until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. But when the Valar entered into Aya, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was as if naught was yet made, which they had seen in vision, and all was but on point to begin, and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth and the flowering of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and foresung, and they must achieve it. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time, and in the midst of the vast halls of Aya, there came to be that hour and that place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. And in this work, the chief part was taken by Manwë and Aule and Ulmo. But Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it if he might to his own desires and purposes. And he kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it. And he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." But Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he had called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said unto Melkor, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou." And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar. For that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions and did there what he would, but he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by love of the children of Iluvatar for whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and splendor, taking upon the forms some as of male and some as of female, for that difference of temper they had even from the beginning. And and the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves, and they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on the earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued. His envy grew then, the greater within him. His envy grew then, the greater within him. And he also took visible form. But because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty, greater than any of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea, and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces with a deadly cold. Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And of those tumults, the elves know but little. For what has here been declared is some from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eldalie spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the Elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar, the High Elves, that the Valar endeavored ever, and in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth. For as surely as the Valar begun a labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet their labor was not all in vain. And though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and all the things were in hue and shape other than the Valar had at first intended, slowly nonetheless the earth was fashioned and made firm, and thus the habitation of the children of Ilúvatar established at last in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. Finished. Good. All right. So that was Ainulindalë, the music of the Ainur and the creation story. And I find it really fascinating. So thanks for listening to that reading. I hope you enjoyed it. I just like it. We could talk about it a little bit more. But I really just do like it because of, the themes of consonance and discord, consonance of beauty, themes of beauty with harmony and consonance, and then disobedience with discord against the character who's, supposed to, of course, allegorically represent God there. So that is the creation story for Middle Earth, written, put to text by J.R.R. Tolkien, but edited and compiled by his son, Christopher Tolkien. So let's go through the chat and see what you guys have to say. Yeah, I will say that was my first reading. I don't have much experience reading out loud, and I know there was some there were some names that I could pronounce beforehand, and I'm like, oh wait, how do you pronounce that? I think Adalie, another I think Elven name for the High Elves, the firstborn. I think they're known as the firstborn. So anyway, I actually, you know what? I'm sure he has. I really do not know the extension of Tolkien's family. I only know Christopher Tolkien because of the editing work that he did for his father's world. So his father's, history of Middle Earth. So I don't know how involved the Tolkien grandchildren are with their grandfather's work, but it'd be interesting to know. My handsome prof says, such a great lesson in the folly of Melkor. He was impatient for the void to be filled, so he began to create on his own rather than serve to wait upon and facilitate the will of the Ainur. And I think Melkor is a really, really obviously Luciferian figure. He's very interesting. And I'm glad that Tolkien put this for his character. He was the greatest of the Ainur. So he was the most powerful. He was given the most gifts and the most knowledge of things. And distinguishing him from the rest, or for most of the rest of the Ainur, is the fact that he had knowledge of other of whatever knowledge the other Ainur had. So if you heard at the beginning of the text, every Ainur, every spirit that came out of the creation of Ilúvatar, that's his, the Ainur are his first creation. Every spirit or every creation had a distinct theme and had a distinct personality, had a distinct gift, had a distinct temper. In the beginning, it's only one Ainur singing, or Ainu. I think Ainur is plural. Ainu, and then maybe apart from a few that could work together, they were really individualized. But Melkor had the ability and knowledge and perception of all of them as individuals. So he was the most powerful. Like he was pretty much second to Iluvatar himself to being the most powerful. And then you can see that he descended into the, went through the void, as descended into Arda, descended into that, what they had to be a vision, which was the foreshadowing of the creation of the world. And he was among them, those to go. So he wanted to take on the physical powers of creating. And he has a very interesting strife with Aule, the Ainu, who, so you've got Aule of the earth. He's pretty much the god of the dwarves, he's of the mountains, of the ground, Manwe of the sky, and Ulmo of the waters. And we've read that he has strife with Manwe, his brother, and the mind of Iluvatar, but he also has strife with Ainur, not Ainur, all these names. He also has strife. Melchior also has strife with Aule, and the reason for that is Aule created. Iluvatar gave him the gift to create, to fashion, and to make. Now all of the Ainur can do that, but he had craftsmanship very much in line with Melkor's ability to craft and create, but on a lesser scale. But unlike Melchior, he did not have the pride. He didn't say, "This is my creation, this is my art, I'm the master of my creation." He created only for the sake of creating, just because he loved it. It was a passion. And so that's why he's a good figure versus Melkor is an evil, like I'm creating things to worship me. And actually Aule has a little bit of a conflict with his creation of the dwarves. He's the one that has fashioned the dwarves, and actually that was the against. I'll just kind of spoil it a little bit. If you guys want to know the strife between elves and dwarves in Middle Earth, it's because elves and men were the vision and the design of Iluvatar himself, distinguished from the Ainur, the spirits, the gods. But Aule, in his craftsmanship, he had created beings to live under the mountains, and Iluvatar rebukes him, saying, "You can, you did this against me. You were not to create beings." And he repented, and he felt so sorry for disobeying Iluvatar that he was about to smite all the dwarves that he had created. And actually, there's a great art piece. Actually, it might be in one of the copies of the Simarillion, of this giant god figure about to smite these very small, and they're naked because they're just created, these small bearded beings that are naked, and they're vulnerable, and they're saying, "Please, please don't smite us." But he's crying, and Ale is crying as he's about to smite his creation, and Iluvatar pities him, and pities the dwarves, or whatever they're called, before they're called the dwarves, um, and he by his mercy, Iluvatar allows Ale to keep these beings as their own, beings of free will, living in the mountains, and crafting as they will. But the strife comes from the disobedience of creating something outside Iluvatar, whereas the elves and men are from Iluvatar, and I think there is a consequence. So Aule repents of his action, but sin does not go without consequence. So the consequence is that there is eternal strife between the race of elves and the race of men, because that was just how the dwarves came to be. So, and this is, again, all of this is written in the Simarillion. So cool. I haven't read any of the stuff like for 15 years, but it's always worth going back. Oh, Interesting. So Elijah Brown says, "I'm not as late as I thought." Oh, yeah, and you can always find the text of. Oh, you can always listen to the text reading on the replay. You also say, "Man, this reading goes so well with the chicken noodle soup I'm eating." Interesting. Sounds like a work of art. This chicken noodle soup. Dr. Y says, "Have you ever considered a side career in recording audiobooks?" That I appreciate. I would take that as a compliment. I would say that would be super cool. But I would really have to practice. I feel comfortable enough to practice things like prose. And I feel comfortable enough about doing dialogue when it comes to Final Fantasy games and playing the villain or playing the good guys and or mischievous fiends and stuff like that. Being cartoonish. But as far as dialogue, I would have to practice that so hard for me to be convincing. I think I would have to practice, the vocal mannerisms of a male character versus a female character. Like I can read Iluvatar, the god character, but my voice is still female. um, and I'm gonna say this. This might be a little controversial, but it's just been my experience. I think men can, with when it comes to audiobooks, I think men just do female characters that their voices so much better than women do voices of male characters. They just know how to do it. And actually, you know what? I know why. I think it's a physical thing. Um, Men can pitch their voice up a register without much physical strain. But women, we have a more limited register when it comes to our vocal cords. It's not to say I would drop my voice, you know. I was speaking a character, for Manwe and Melchior and all that. So I would say something with a lot of force and a lot of emphasis, to have that commanding air about it. But I would be more comfortable reading. Actually, I probably would be more comfortable reading nonfiction for audiobooks than fiction. Dialogue, I would have to practice. I just there you have to require a little bit of acting skills for doing dialogue for audiobooks. Now I have experience with voiceover. I've done unfruitful voiceovers for commercials I was never paid for. Two of them. And I can do those well. I've done also my DistroKid promo videos where I'm reading a script, and so I feel comfortable doing stuff like that. But yeah, as far as dialogue, actually, I think a lot of the Simarillion is narrative. It's just prose. So if I got the pronunciation correctly, I think I could read just a little bit better. But for something like that, that would be a lot of practice. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, I didn't make it myself. Yeah, it is a beautiful story. It's a really nice start to the myth. Pretty cool creation myth. I think so too. I mean, yeah, starting it with music, why not? I love that authors, a lot of a lot of authors like J.R.R. Tolkien, Arthur C. Clarke. I know there were others too. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I've heard science fiction writers. I've heard, with J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, authors that are established writers. I'm talking about older authors, like of the 21st century. They just had the ability of describing music very well, even if they were not musically inclined. Or when I say musically inclined, I mean just don't have the music as their profession. And I'm thinking, yeah, Tolkien uses themes like the third theme, the second theme, discord, consonance, harmony. I mean, they're sort of basic terms in music. They're not obviously specific music terms, but it's pretty fascinating. It's like, yeah, there's nothing inconsistent as far as the terms that he uses for music. Thank you, Ghost Team Ghost Planet Go. I had fun with that. I'm actually surprised that my voice can carry over. When I was practicing, because you know me. Even if it's just reading, like to me, it's got to be a little bit like a performance, or people just lose interest, or I would lose it. If you don't emphasize and be dramatic about it, like you could read a sentence and not comprehend what you just said. So it helps me reading that way as well. Um, Ascetericide. Interesting. A very interesting name. I really deeply connect with Tolkien's description of music in Ainulindalë. Such a beaut. I know. A beautiful way, beautiful and intuitive way to describe harmony and discord. I know. Just like what we were saying. Welcome, by the way. Good stuff. Good stuff. And thank you ahead of time if you guys have blocked any bots, because I forgot to say, hey guys, I'm going to be reading for a few. So good. I'm skipping comments, but I found this. I'm going to go scroll back up. But Middle Earth is so much better with the dwarves. Yeah, dwarves are great. Actually, I don't really know where the hobbits came from. I forgot where the halflings came from. But if you guys want to enlighten me, I don't think it's anywhere written here in Simarillion. No, it's all about the descendants of the mighty high elves and the mighty men. So Final Fantasy fan says, funny thing is I was reading along the story and at times I got lost because I have a different copy from the Silmarillion from your copy, but still managed to read along the story. Oh, I think I mentioned it before. I can't believe you did that. That's cool. No. You probably don't, but I mentioned before that I was taking some excerpts out because of the difficulty of the sentence structure, and then also some parts of those narratives. The narrative was more commentary. It's still important commentary, but it wasn't really the narrative flow. So I took out like a good two and a half paragraphs of that story. So no, we probably had the same copy. I think I skipped a word. I said this instead of that, I know. And then I actually did take out some text. So I think we do have the same. All right. So that's pretty much it for me, but maybe we can follow up on some commentary on some things that that caught my interest. Okay, so I want to talk about Melchior with his Discord, and his. There were a few things. So first, it starts. Some of his thoughts that are outside of Iluvatar. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightaway discord arose about him, or straightway. I just want to say straightaway. Discord arose about him, and that many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed, and their music faltered. And talking about the melodies which had been heard before now started, before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. Where is this one? So Iluvatar is coming out again the second time, after the third theme, and Melchior is getting at it again, and he's having mastery, in this cacophony. He's having mastery. And when I read this, the other music that is Melchior's against Iluvatar's had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison as of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And I'm thinking that sounds like college. I remember in college there was an exercise that all the faculty encouraged every person, whether they're a composition student, to do, or in a composition class. And that exercise was, I want you to compose a piece of music, but choose only 3 notes and you can't go past those notes. And that actually is not clamorous. It doesn't need to be cacophony or clamorous. Um, and I it, anyway, it can be nice, like minimalistic feel. But I just remember, yeah, that sounds like college. I actually had old manuscript paper when I was in high school. Oh no, this is a couple years after high school. This is about 15 years ago. I had this giant, music staff paper to write, and I actually did write out a theme for Iluvatar or the Flame Imperishable for Ainulindalë. I wanted to write an orchestra piece with choir for Ainulindalë. I don't have the resources to have an orchestra and full choir for that. That'd be cool. But in time, in 4 to 5 years, I will have the resources as far as the libraries and the skill set to compose an electronic adaptation of Ainulindalë. The vision I have for a musical adaptation of Ainulindalë is going to take some skill that I do not have right now. I admit it. I mean, even even when I started writing out notes, back when I was 20 years old, I thought I had a mentor actually. I had a music mentor that said, "Hey, all I'm seeing is very nice. I'm seeing this giant chord and a theme coming out of it and all that. But this is really expansive, and you just composed a 5-piece ensemble for your high school capstone project. You're not ready for the orchestra or the choir." And I knew he was right. It was way too ambitious a project at that time. And even now I'm thinking, well, I like to do this for electronic music. And I still have that melody. From 15 years ago when I started generating it at 20 years old, I still have the melody for what I think to have for the flame imperishable, the being, the essence that is Iluvatar. And and actually before preparing the stream tonight, I was just kind of thinking about all of it, what it would sound like. So yeah, musical adaptation would be incredible. Yeah, I would have to really understand the skill set and resources I would want, because electronic music, if you guys, I mean, I know you guys are more into the popular art stuff and the commentary, but with what I'm doing with SuperCollider, it's definitely electronic, but it can actually have some very otherworldly sounds that could sound analog, that could actually sound like instruments generated in the physical space. That's my endeavor. I remember talking to my dad, a couple months back, a few months back, when we were talking about music, and he understandably, he said, "Well, I know you're doing electronic music, and I do like what you're doing, but I can't really resonate with electronic music like I can with actual instruments." And I understand where he's coming from. One, I play acoustic violin and I love it. And I do believe in the importance of acoustic sound in the physical space. But electronic music that I want to achieve in the future, yeah, of course will sound electronic, but will have a kind of a heightened state, like a higher tier of quality and fidelity. And my last video with FM synthesis, I was achieving some sounds that obviously are digital, but sound pretty awesome too. They don't sound like a strict synthesizer, even though I am strictly working with FM synthesis. So, but that, the endeavor to do something like Ainulindalë, a musical adaptation, I'm probably gonna be 40 years old, before I could even approach a project like that. Now, that's not to say I wouldn't start working on something like that, but I have a lot of projects. I have a lot of unfinished projects in the queue, at least for this year, for sure, that I won't have the time for. But I am building skill. Actually, I was thinking of what I could do for Melchior, and it describes actual instruments. So an orchestral adaptation would probably be preferable. But, I was thinking of Melkor, and I was thinking, he could actually try to sound like the other Ainur and Iluvatar, but kind of, compressed and angst and granulated, because I actually have developed the skill in SuperCollider with, granular synthesis, where, like, you start with, like, a very, dusty sound that kind of branches out into, like, an open sound. I could definitely do that for something like Melkor. But I would also do things like, recording voice for, female voice for, the characters that represent sky or life or different things like that. But, yeah, anyway, all that good stuff. Final Fantasy fan says, in some stories, I don't know why I always get drawn to some of the villain backstories, like in this case with Melkor Morgoth. Maybe because I've with the maybe uh, because of the Star Wars prequels, the origins of Darth Vader. I do think not every villain needs a backstory, but when you're talking about a creation story that includes a villain, yeah, that's pretty imperative. Um, and it makes his character uh makes the story. There was it's very interesting that the spirits, the Ainur, descend into this world Arda, and it's totally void. It's nothing. It's not the vision that they saw, and then they started, doing a lot of labor to make this world become the world that they saw in the vision. And as that sounds difficult already, but then you have a very powerful spirit and antagonist working against you. So, I'm an artist. So if I actually had an external antagonist destroy or disrupt everything I create, that would be super frustrating. I would probably quit. But no, it's really fascinating stuff. Um, Anything else? I felt like I was going to say something else and I can't remember. So it will come to me. Um, yeah. The what comes after Ainulindalë is one more text before the actual admission or entrance of the story. And that is the Vala Cuenta. And that's pretty interesting. And it's the account of the Valar and the Maiar, according to the lore of the Eldar, the high race of elves. And so it's all these Valar, the characters. So Manwë, his wife is Varda, the Lady of the Stars. And I try to think of really kind of just otherworldly things, like just, a lady spirit of unparalleled beauty. Yeah, I won't read the text, but this is following Ainulindalë. So let's see. So Manwë, he's the first of all kings, so he's the king of the Valar, and he is of the wind and the air, and he's the lord of the breath of Arda. All swift birds, strong of wings, he loves, and they come and go at his bidding. With Manwë dwells Varda, the Lady of the Stars, who knows all the regions of Ea. Too great is her beauty to be declared in the words of men and of elves, for the light of Iluvatar lives still in her face. And light is her power and joy. So Manwë is of the wind and of the sky, and his spouse Varda is of the light. And that's a beautiful, parallel. The husband and wife working, um, not synchronously, but just working together. They complement their specialty, and their love of a thing like sky and light is a complement. And then we have And then they have different names for these characters, but I won't get into those. Ulmo is the Lord of Waters. He has no spouse. He is alone. He moves as he wills in all the deep waters about the earth or under the earth. He's next in might to Manwë, and before Valinor, he was made closest to him in friendship. But he seldom goes to the councils. He's kind of he's the like the silent type. He's the introvert of the Valar. Next is but rest assured, even though he's isolated and introvert, he loves elves and men. He protects them with his waters and stuff like that. Aule, just a little bit less in might than Ulmo. And his lordship is over all the substances of Arda, of which Arda is made. And then the spouse of Aule is Yavanna, the giver of the fruits. So she's the goddess of, the woods and the forest and the trees and the grass and, takes form of trees and all of that. And there's got to be some great, art regarding her. And actually, just as a side, yeah, great stuff. Yeah. Anyway, and all these names, all these names that Tolkien created for these characters have meaning. So let's go ahead and see, because this is what makes the Simarillion great, is there's this index of names and meanings. So let's first start with Melchior, since he, besides Iluvatar, was introduced. What does Mel mean? The Quenya name for the great rebellious Vala, the beginning of evil. Actually, it doesn't say the description of this name. There isn't a pen. Let's see. Yes, I found it. Mel is love. This stems. It stems from the word that's actually what it is. So any name that begins with Mel means love. Love of craftsman, or love of craft. So Melkor originally was probably a noble name. It's not an evil name. Kor, I don't think Kor is. I don't see Kor at all as a name. But I'm going to imagine that Melkor means a love of something. Let's see what Man is for Manwë. If you guys don't mind indulging just a sec, and then I'll get back into the chat. Chat is kind of light, so I'm kind of going as so. So let's see what Man means. Not man, Man. If I can turn to it. Okay, Man is, it was right behind Mel, and I turned the pages way back. Good, blessed, and unmarred. Aman, Manwë. So Aman, there would be names of hills or valleys or rivers with the word Aman or Man, M-A-N. Var, I think, is light, and that's the name where Varda comes from. Var. Oh, it's not here. No, darn. Okay. Oh well. But Val is power. So Valar. Valinor. Yeah, it's got that great mythological. Wen, like Arwen, is maiden. It's the ending of names. Yahweh. Oh, that's pretty. Yave, Yahweh, and it has like the accents on it. Yahweh, fruit. Quenya in Yavanna or Yavanie. Quenya, name of the 9th month of the year. Quenya, name of the 9th month of the year, and Yavie, autumn. So I love that name, Yavanna. It's really. I actually have a character. Well, she's not a character. Actually, she's just a memory of a character in the fiction piece that I'm writing right now, my science fiction. And I'll keep the name under wraps. I have to, because it's alluding to another thing of another character, so I don't want to talk about that, of course. But it actually, the name Yavanna actually is very close to the name I'm thinking of. I just love that idea. So if you guys want me to read more, I totally will indulge in the different languages. Actually, if you guys think of a name like that you know of Middle Earth, and you're like, well, hey, what does that mean? You know, I could look it up right here. I think if I for Ainulindalë and Ainur, I have a feeling. I'm going to guess that that means holy. So I'm going to see if that's available. Aina. So not I by itself. Aina is holy. Alda is tree. Alqua, swan. I'll stop. I promise. Undunye, sun, west, or west. Dunedain. So Dunedain, the race of men that where Aragorn has lineage, that means, of course, men of the West. Yeah. I could keep going, but I'll stop. All right. Etc. aside says, more like Ainulindalë as a music suite, try to capture what the creation of Middle Earth would sound like. Yeah, and there's a lot of activity. It just can't, it can't be just what, it's really hard. It can't be kind of a passive musical narrative because it's actually quite active in the flow of it. You got this theme with the Iluvatar, and then you got these, separate voices of all the Ainur. And of course, you couldn't realistically in a music composition, you just couldn't like have a silent bit and then another voice and then like 30 voices, if not more. No, you'd have to actually have like a really crafty way, like a very clever way of incorporating probably no more than 4 or 5 voices. Maybe it'd be a voice of Melkor. No, Melkor would disrupt. A voice that would pertain. No, couldn't pertain to Manwë yet because he's the second theme when Melkor first creates that dissonance. So you have to be pretty creative. You don't have to strictly adapt to what's going on, but you've got the theme, and then you've got separate voices, and then some harmony, and then Melkor and integrating his thoughts. And it doesn't have to be in discord just yet, but it could be a little bit more like he's fighting. And then Iluvatar raises up a new theme, a second theme where Manwë comes in. So something like that would bring to light music that would depict Manwë and Varda. And then Ulmo, second in command or second in might to Manwë, and then Aule and I would pick distinct voices for the main Valar characters. And then a third theme would arise, and then clash and clamor, and then silence, and then Iluvatar speaking. And I was kind of thinking of it like after silence would just be like between a fifth and a fourth, and the first degree of something, and then grow the theme again, the flame imperishable again. I have it in my mind right now. It's really, I really do like it. It has stuck with me, off and on. I won't think about it for years, but it's stuck with me for about 15 years now. And it's this idea, it's not even a metric melody. It's just this melodic line just kind of growing and expanding into space and then developing and stuff like that. It's supposed to be it's supposed to sound nothing like a melody as we usually hear it. And then, of course, you'd have a musical narrative after that following, where they see the vision and then descend to the flame, to the being that they see for the first time, and then descend into Arda, and then have the creation, the labor of love. Final Fantasy fan says, I've grown up with the Star Wars prequel since I was a kid, plus because of that, we're getting something like that with Final Fantasy 1, Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, and Garland's Origin. Okay, interesting. Well, you kind of have to flesh out some things with Final Fantasy 1 because it's just these 4 warriors and Garland for a little bit, and then you just go area to area. When I started my Final Fantasy endeavor, I started with 4. I don't really feel the need to start with 1, even though it's perfect. It's like it's well, I don't want to say it's perfect, but I don't know what the gameplay is like. But there's not really any story. It's just capture the uh, they capture a princess, right? And then he leaves, then he comes back for the final fight, and then that's it. And I understand that the final fight is pretty hard. But Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, they have pretty dramatic stories. Dr. Y says, Melchior reminds me of Melchior, one of the traditional names of the 3 wise men. Melchior means king of light in Hebrew. I wonder how much I don't, even though Tolkien was Catholic, I don't know if he drew from Greek and Hebrew influences to his language. He really stuck with the Scandinavian region, and I think I remember the 2 were Finnish and Welsh. I think it was that. Yeah. I think it is a cool place. Go Team Ghost Planet Go. I would love, like, for the technology that we have now and the musical instrumentation and capacity that we have now, I think you could do a really fine job of an animated depiction. A beautiful of animation of unparalleled beauty. An animated depiction of the Simarillion. I think that would just be so fantastic. But it'd have to be faithful to Tolkien and the heart of Tolkien and the heart of his works. All right. Let's see. If chat is slow, I'm trying to think of what I can talk about. I felt like I said everything I needed to say. I can't, but I felt like I had something else to say as well. I mean, we could still talk, guys, but if it's slowing down, I at least want to say what I'm thinking to work toward the next week or so as far as my content. So this week, as far as my sound experimentation, I probably won't do SuperCollider. SuperCollider will be coming. I have to learn 2 things before I do a demo on it. Well, let's just say what I'm working on for SuperCollider. I am working on a couple more lines of code that can probably dramatically change FM synthesis with the ambient sound tones that I have and sound files. And I might even explore new sound files to see what they sound like. And maybe dynamically, I shouldn't say that, but change not in real time. Well, change the nature of my reverb synth too, just to add some variety. Reverb is a delicate thing in SuperCollider. I'm pretty happy with what I have come up with FM synthesis. There's one more thing I want to do, and that is, in addition to adding a little bit more dynamic changes to the code, and it wouldn't change much from my previous video, I would really like to find a way to apply FM synthesis, not for sound files as I had just done, but for live processing. So I have my mic here, and processing voice with FM or even violin with FM. It's been a while since I've done sound in UGens for, it's a UGen for live processing. But I feel pretty much I've done everything I've wanted to for FM. I might organize my notes. I need to start. I do my SuperCollider demos and the code works, but like I'm still one of those people thinking I'm sure the code would be handy for people to use, and I could put a link to like a paste bin. That there's a website called Pastebin where you could just paste your code, send it as a link, and then people can access your code. I'm still not a SuperCollider instructor. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a programmer, so I feel a little tentative sending my code out into the public because it's just people can find fault. Like a programmer could say she didn't do that effectively. So, but I guess if the interest was there, I would do it. Say, hey guys, I'm not a programmer. This is just what I'm learning, and it's generating these sounds safely and all that. So I might do that, do something like that for FM synthesis because I think that's important. I'm not going anywhere yet. Go team, go. So I'm just, if the chat is slow, I'm just wanting to get my content out there now. What else was I saying? SuperCollider. Yeah, to work with live processing with FM. And then I should wrap up FM. I should be done with my FM topics. I think I will go back. I'll start composing with FM because I've got this great bass sound, so I gotta utilize that bass sound that I created with FM. So wrapping up FM, I will get back into granular synthesis. So FM and granular synthesis are really the two main things I'm interested in SuperCollider. I might get back into MIDI scores, but I just I'm just finding myself being able to compose much faster, obviously in Logic. I might bring up some core patterns again, but I don't know. I'm kind of putting that to rest for a little bit unless I can find some use for it. I thought I was going to use MIDI scores for live performance, and I just haven't seen the need in the near future to do that, unfortunately. Maybe I will. I don't want to like say I will never go back to it, but it's on hold. I'm really wanting to explore sound synthesis and live processing. Live processing has to be done this year. I've waited 2 years now. I'm going to do it this year, and the year passes, and I always say, I should have done some more live processing. So look for that. Look for not this week, but in the next week or two, probably next 2 weeks, one more FM if I can get the troubleshooting correct for the live processing where it's safe, and then I'll get back into granular synthesis and try to come up with more interesting sounds and textures. So I might actually probably do an original music video for my sound experimentation. I've been really working hard on my synthwave track, so I might just give you an update, a recording of me talking about it and stuff like that because I'm having a lot of fun. It's pretty extensive. I mean to do these single tracks really quickly, but they just end up being really just long, long time to make. So that's, be on the lookout for that this week. I might do some extra commentary on just, talking about aesthetics with Tolkien before. I will get back into my Donkey Kong series. I have one little bit of recording to do, then a voiceover recording for one. So there is one on its way. I've got like 3 more videos of the first Donkey Kong game to do. And I think that would be everything. I might have something to post for St. Patrick's Day next week. There's just this tiny little Irish reel that I've just been messing around with, and I don't have the time or ability to put chords behind it, but I might just do a fiddle, a standalone fiddle with reverb, and just play it in honor of the Irish culture for St. Patrick's Day. And for the book study for the prof, they are going back to just like it is with Tolkien, they're going back to the Return of the King. This is Simarillion, but they're going back to the Return of the King for tomorrow. And I'm actually not sure where we are. I've been ahead a little bit, so if that is in the works tomorrow, because tomorrow's Tuesday, right? Yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. That will be ballparking 9:30-ish with Big Al and the prof over on the Catholic Bible Geek. So more Tolkien, of course. Let's get through some of these comments. Yeah, Dr. Y, I heard the style of I haven't seen Spider-Verse, and from what I've seen, I don't suppose that would be the right call. But I heard that people did really did a lot of elements and touches of Arcane that could work too. I mean, we have the ability to produce some really beautiful animation, and I want to do it more like I would do 2D animation with some more. I would like 2D animation with some beautiful still shots and movement and stuff like that. But that's just my opinion. The magic of 2D animation. All right. I don't think I have anything else to say, guys. Next week for my commentary, I think I do have a topic. I want to talk about what goes into what might, according to another Vanity Fair article, what may go to the behind the scenes. What may Okay, let me say this again. What goes into creating music behind the scenes for film music, and how composers may be working for peanuts, and some composer assistance as well. Um, so what is this from Final Fantasy? If no one's wearing green on St. Patrick's Day, they'll be a boulevard of broken dreams. I know that song, but that's all I know. I don't get the reference there. So yeah, I'll be talking about. I think I will be talking about what goes into behind the scenes of the working environment of film composers, and just my commentary on it, because I'm not a film composer, but if the working conditions are what this article suggests, then it's pretty sad, and I'd like to talk about it as well, and give some thoughts and insights on it. But in any case, well, I guess we'll stop there. I'm so glad you guys took the time to listen to me read. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the chats of other streams. And until I see you next, keep producing and preserving the art you love. Take care.